What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics. And today we got a reaction to Tears for Fears classic album songs from the big chair, brought to us by our patrons. Every month on Patreon, I put up an exclusive album poll. The patrons choose the album they want. I react to it, and it's exclusive on Patreon for several months. So if you'd like to support us in any way, check out that Patreon link below, the Patreon link on the end screen. We couldn't do without the patrons. Greatly appreciate them. If you want to give a one-time donation, one-time reaction, check out our Buy Me a Coffee page down below. All right, Trey and I, years ago, did just a live stream, like reaction listening party to this album. I don't even remember doing it, to be quite honest with you. I always remember my reactions and reviews. I don't remember doing it, but I discovered it when I looked on the channel. So that was interesting. I own this album, as I did every freaking album that was popular during this time. But also, like I did with every album or almost every album, I didn't listen to the whole album. So some of these songs I know very well. 3 of them I know very well. And there's only 8 songs on here, but let's get into it. Second studio album released in February 1985, followed to their successful debut album, The Hurting, 2 years earlier in 1983. Significant departure. That album had a different sound to it. It's dark, introspective synth pop. This features a more mainstream guitar-based pop rock sound, sophisticated production values for sure, as you'll see, and diverse stylistic influences, while Roland Orzabal and Ian Stanley's lyrics displayed socially and politically conscious themes. 2 in the UK, 1 in US on our many best of lists for 1980s albums. It was to be titled The Working Hour, but Roland thought to change it to Songs from the Big Chair, a title derived from the 1976 American television film Sybil, about a woman with multiple personality disorder who only feels safe when sitting in her analyst's big chair. The title, according to Kurt Smith, reflects both the distinct personalities of each song on the album and the band's opinion that they were the targets of a hostile British music press at the time. They definitely were. The album utilizes many styles and influences, and progressive rock was cited as a primary influence on the album. Pitchfork has an interesting review of this album, just kind of an overview of Tears for Fears. So I'm just going to share it because it's better than anything I could have analyzed and meta-analysis and put together for you. In 1970, the psychologist Arthur Janoff published The Primal Scream, in which he detailed his theory that neurosis and baggage that adults carry with them are caused by repressed traumatic events from childhood. That same year, of course, John Lennon and Yoko Ono underwent therapy sessions with Janoff for about 5 months. Lennon channeled the experiences into his solo debut, John Lennon and the Plastic Ono Band. He created one album out of his encounters with Janoff. Tears for Fears based their entire career off of his work. By the way, there's a full album review of Lennon's and Yoko's album up on the channel. Even the band's name is derived from the Primal Scream on a theory of children's nightmares. Kurt Smith said, basically, if they're allowed to be themselves in their waking hours and are allowed to let their natural crying out, then they won't dream up monsters at night for kids to be scared, or because they can't face the reality of being scared of their parents. Since emotional stress is a central issue here, the solution is to encourage an emotional response so intense that the years of hidden anger and hurt are allowed to surface from the depths of the unconscious. On this album, Tears for Fears took a cue from Lennon and applied what they learned from Janoff towards studies of single subjects: money, power, love, war, faith. But where Lennon went small, Tears for Fears went huge. They took the goth and synth pop foundation, as I talked about, from they constructed in the debut, The Hurting, and piled on saxophone, fairlights, guitar solos, samplers, and live drums on top of drum machines. They wrote cresting choruses, arena-ready anthems, elegant ballads, and multi-section songs that have more in common with prog rock than most of New Wave. And they improbably created not just one of the biggest albums of the 80s, but an album that manages to exude the 1980s in the same way Fleetwood Mac's Rumors conveys the lonely narcissism and hedonism of the 70s, or Love's Forever Changes captures both the bliss and ominous of the summer of love. Both those albums are up on the channel as well. I don't usually share a whole section from someone, but I thought that was really well done. Tears for Fears felt like they had something to prove to critics and themselves. The Hurting went to #1 on the UK album chart, sold 1 million copies, yielded 3 top 5 singles: Mad World, Pale Shelter, and Change. But the UK music press approached it with near hostility. In his review of the album for NME, Gavin Martin writes, "Sure, they may be popular. So was the Reverend Jim Jones when he took 5,000 followers to Guyana to commit mass suicide." End quote. That's a little harsh. Just a tad bit, probably. Roland told the Quintus in an interview, "We weren't particularly liked by some of the music journals. If you were on the front cover of Smash Hits, you were doomed." So I just thought it's an interesting background to understand what brought them to this. The music won't be in the video, but it's going to be at a Vimeo link below, so click on that. Follow on with this. Let's jump into it with the album opener, obviously written by Roland and Ian Stanley, because I mentioned that at the start. We got Shout, second single. Roland's the lead singer on the track, and he described it as, quote, "a simple song about protest, 4 in the UK, number 1 in the US, and a hit all over the world. Roland said, quote, "The song was written in my front room on just a small synth and a drum machine. Initially, I only had the chorus, which was very repetitive, like a mantra, which you'll hear. I played it to Ian Stanley, our keyboardist, and Chris Hughes, the producer. I saw it as a good album track, but they were convinced it would be a hit around the world." And Roland also said the song is actually more concerned with political protest than the common view that it is about the primal scream theory. So just a little FYI there. A song living in the U.S. that I became very familiar with. All right, I'm going to the lyrics up as always. Thanks again, patrons. All right, shout. There's 4 different versions of the song. This album version, 6 minutes, 31 seconds. The video version, which was so important then, was a flat 6 minutes. The single version in the UK was 4:52. The US single version was 3:59, so it cut off 2.5 minutes of the song. You know, listening back to it, like, it was such a huge hit. Obviously, I was singing while it was number 1 in the US for three weeks. It's an odd song to be a big hit. It sounds very 80s, but there's going to be more other songs on there that sound more 80s. But it just has, it's like a kitchen sink song. In other words, they threw everything in the kitchen sink out with all the different instrumental runs on here of different things, right? But it's just, it is a strange song with that mantra just being repeated to be that big of a hit. That does make it stand out a little bit for me for a song to hit during that time. All right, let's go to the second track. We got The Working Hour, written by, of course, by Roland, Ian, and Manny Elias. Tears for Fears were touring for The Hurting when Manny came up with the drum pattern. He suggested it to Roland, who took some chords from the keyboardist Ian Stanley and wrote words to it. They recorded it on tape and built it from there. Roland has stated that it deals with Kurt and him realizing they had become a business, something that was hard for them to deal with in their early 20s. So he wrote his aggression off with The Working Hour. I got to also mention, I didn't mention it on Shout, and I should have, but if you were a big fan of The Hurt, which, like I said, sold 1 million copies in the UK and had 3 top 5 singles, and you put this album on and heard Shout, you were probably like, what happened here? What is going on? Because it's quite a left turn. All right, The Working Hour. Obviously, a shout out has to go to Mel Collins and Will Gregory on the saxophone there. I don't know who's playing what, but the saxophone really stands out. Roland's on lead again, Kurt's on backing, but it's just really a fantastically done song. It's over 6.5 minute song, just like Shout is. It's over half of it's instrumental, right? The first 2 minutes of it it's an instrumental lead up, and then maybe the last minute and a half or so, I didn't put it on a clock, is an instrumental fade out. And the instrumentation is next level. You can feel Roland's emotion in it. It's a really good song. Next up, we have Everybody Wants to Rule the World, written by Stanley Orzabal and Chris Hughes, the third single. Peaked at 2 in Ireland, Australia, and the UK. They could not get to number 1 in the UK with either, with a lot of stuff. Number 1 in Canada, New Zealand, and the US in 1986, and won Best Single at the Brit Awards. The song was a last-minute addition during recording sessions of the album. The decision to include the song in the album came after Roland played 2 chords on his acoustic guitar for Hughes. It was recorded in 2 weeks and added as the final track on the album. According to Roland, the final line in the song's chorus, originally written as "Everybody Wants to Go to War," contributed to his indifference towards the track. Interview with Mix Magazine, Hughes said that, quote, "As a piece of recording history, the song is bland as hell." Roland's unimpressed reaction to the track during their songwriting sessions prompted Hughes to convince him to record it in a calculated effort to garner American chart success. Well, mission accomplished. After completing their sessions at 6 p.m., they would spend an hour reviewing each recording many times. This helped Roland to create the song's guitar figure and change its title. Roland acknowledged that the shuffle beat used in the song was alien to their way of writing music, stating it was, quote, "jolly rather than square and rigid in the manner of Shout," but it continued the process of becoming more extrovert. Kurt Smith, the song's lead singer, said the themes were quite serious. It's about everybody wanting power, about warfare, and the misery it causes. The song's lyrics have elicited different political interpretations, both then and even still now. It's on many best song lists of the 80s. In 2021, Rolling Stone ranked it at number 319 in their list of 500 songs of all time. And I will say it is one of the best songs of the 80s. I was really tired of this song when it was out because this is like prime Sean music time, right? We're in the mid 80s. I'm in middle school into high school. And so music is everything to me. But, retrospectively over the last several years, I really like this song is an all-time great song. It just is. Like, it's a song I never get tired of now. I was tired of it then, but when I hear it, it has that feel-good feeling. Even though, as Kurt mentioned, the lyrics aren't necessarily feel-good at all, but it's got that nice dichotomy. It's like Roland just wanted to get that guitar in there at the end. He's also playing the keyboards on here, and of course comes in on the choruses that work so well. It is definitely a different song than Shout and The Working Hour, for sure, when you come to it on the album. And I wonder, I mean, there's another song that has not the same sound, but the other song I know on this album has a different sound to those first two tracks as well. But it used to kind of be a little debate. What do you like better, Shout or Everybody Wants to Rule the World? Back in the day, I would have said Shout. Now I would say Everybody Wants to Rule the World, but fantastic track. Next up, we have Mother's Talk, sung by Roland, and actually their first single release from this album, a 5th UK Top 40 hit, but it was released 6 months in advance of the album. Roland notes that while Mother's Talk helped move the band in a new creative direction, he does not like the track. The producer, of course, Chris Hughes, considered it important to the band's development, although he and engineer Dave Bascombe agree that it's not one of Roland's best. Roland said, "This was a taster for Songs from the Big Chair, the second album on which we unashamedly tried to become more commercial. I was against it, but I was swayed by some of the people that I was working with. They wanted to come out all guns blazing, but I wasn't ready for that. It was from this point, though, that things really started to explode." He also said about the meaning of the song stems from 2 ideas. One is something that mothers say to their children about pulling faces, making faces. They say the child will stay like that when the wind changes. The other idea is inspired by the anti-nuclear cartoon book When the Wind Blows by Raymond Briggs. It's quite 2 different things. While North America saw Everybody Wants to Rule the World as the first single from the album, this was eventually released there as the 4th and final single, peaking at 27 in the US. Although labeled as a remix, this version of the song is actually a complete re-recording done by the band after their Big Chair tour wrapped up. So the release in the US wasn't this version, it was a different version. That's why I wonder if I know this song, because if I went to 27, I would think that I would, but we'll find out. All right, that was an interesting song. Very well produced. I mean, a product of production, really. I don't say that in a complimentary way. It's the last song on this side, on side 1 of your vinyl, or more likely your cassette, before you flip it over. And it's really tough because those first 3 songs are fantastic. But yeah, this one's a little bit of a miss for me. Good bass work by Kurt. But yeah, I don't know. It does stick in your head. So I guess, I don't know that it's in a good way, but it doesn't really matter because if a song sticks in your head, usually it will be a hit. So yeah, we'll finish it off side 1 that way. Let's go to side 2. And we have I Believe, written only by Roland and dedicated to the English musician Robert Wyatt. He was inspired to write the song after his producer at the time, the aforementioned Chris Hughes, played him Wyatt's then most recent album, Rock Bottom. Roland was, quote, knocked out by the emotion and rawness of it. It was inspired by how Wyatt, quote, laid himself so bare in his music. Now, Roland originally had planned on having Wyatt sing the song, but obviously ended up doing it himself. He admits he tried to imitate Wyatt's style, but eventually went back to the writing style he used during their first album, The Hurting. This song focuses on primal scream and explores Roland's belief in, quote, the healing powers that come with discovering one's true self, even though that process may be extremely painful. It was later a live re-recording, and it effectively served as the album's 5th single. It was Tears for Fears' 9th UK Top 40 hit, peaking at number 3, went in the top 10 in Ireland, and went to 28 in New Zealand. Shout out JSB and Heath. All right, I Believe, a definitely left turn from the rest of the album, even though I think this album is wildly different, the construction of the songs and the musical arrangement. But this is just rolling on the grand piano and on vocals, obviously. Manny on the drums and Will Gregory on the sax, and Kurt's not even on it, but it's very, very dialed back and starts each line out, kind of a classic songwriting technique with I Believe, and then different ways he plays that out without an actual chorus. But it's well done. Roland was sounding like somebody at the beginning, and I was trying to nail it down in my head. And then the longer the song went in, it just blended in and sounded like Roland, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Got 3 songs left. Also only written by Roland. We got Broken, by far the shortest song on the album, only a little bit over 2.5 minutes. Okay, I really just wanted to roll into the next song, but this is basically a fragment of the next song, Head Over Heels, with he only starts singing with about 55 seconds. So it's really just a jamming session for Kurt on the bass, which is fantastic at the start, and then Roland. And then he gets into the fragment. You actually hear the melody of the next song, Head Over Heels. And then he gets into, some different lyricism, but then he goes back at the end and he hits that Time Flies and holds that note. So that's going to take us to our next track. The aforementioned Head Over Heels, written by Roland and Kurt Smith, 4th single in the UK, number 12 in the UK, 3 in the US. It's a romantic love song that, quote, gets a bit perverse, according to Roland, as it tackles on the fears and anxieties involved in a new love affair. It's part of the song suite on the album, sandwiched between the track Broken and its reprise, which is at the end of the song. So I guess we're going to mix all these together. The traditions in the face of the lover indicate a separation caused by thoughts and beliefs molded into us as children, of course. In the second verse, he analyzes his own past, family, expectations of society, fear, the meaning of manhood, and the chaos of living in modern times as an adult. Nothing ever changes when you're acting your age is barely audible, which seems to say that subconsciously we're molded by society as children to be afraid of not living up to expectations. And this continues to affect us in adulthood. I think it always affects us. Yeah, definitely, for sure. This song was so good because it has such a great melody. I never knew it had this much seriousness in it, but I was also 14, 15 at the time. Let's get it. So just interesting choice to have that reprise at the end of with Broken. So from the 55-second mark, the last 55 seconds is not on the single release or any of that. So I'd never heard that, but interesting way to try to book in these together. We got one song left, and it happens to be the longest song on this album. Of Listen, written by Ian and Rowan. It was created really by Ian Stanley, the band's keyboard player, of course, during the recording of their first album, The Hurting. The song initially started out as 4 to 5 chords on a Roland System 100M modular analog synthesizer, but this was enough to convince the other Roland, not the synthesizer, Orzabal, that it was something worth pursuing. Roland said, "I loved it. I thought it was a stunning piece of music." Contrary to popular belief, the song does not include a female vocalist, although in the liner notes, there is a female vocalist, so it's interesting to me. But Roland said, "I came up with all the vocals at the end, which sounded like a woman. It's actually me." And then when it came to doing those strange backing vocals, Ian was just throwing these odd Kenyan words at me, and I would sing them. But I don't think they mean anything at all. Ian said, "I'd been to Kenya and knew the Swahili word for chicken, which is cuckoo. So the rest of it is nonsense. It's absolute rubbish. But if you sing it with enough commitment, you get away with it." All right, let's finish it off. All right, a very almost art rock song on here. Kurt does sing a little bit on it because, he always sings on this and Everybody Wants to Rule the World, and he co-wrote Head Over Heels. Those are kind of his contributions. Roland dominates this album. I don't know, man. This song's fine. I mean, it's not for me. If I would have listened to this whole album, I told you I only listened to the 3 hit songs. There's only one other song I would have really liked as a 14-year-old. And that might be the case right now as a 54-year-old, but let's go into my favorite tracks. And they're probably going to be pretty obvious with Shout, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Head Over Heels, but I'm also going to go with The Working Hour. So those are my faves. Now we'll go to my overall score. This one's tricky. I will give them some super credit. I don't think this album sounds like the 80s sound. A couple songs do a little bit. This is a wildly diverse album instrumentally. I know they were going for commercial success, and they got that definitely. But these songs, I respect the fact that they went on all these different directions. So it's interesting to grade because I don't think a lot of the songs measure up, but then I think the highs are so high. So I'm going to give this album an 8.25 because the highs are incredibly high. You could convince me to go 0.5 higher even, so it's, and I think if I listened to it more, I would probably get it more, but I do like it. So let me know what you think of this album down below. What are your favorites, but what is your favorite song as well? I'm curious on the whole Shout, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, and maybe it's something else for you because you're very familiar with this album and know it and think something else. I'm missing out on a hidden treasure here, which I could be. Thanks again to the patrons. If you want to join, contribute any way, join on these votes for these albums, check out the Patreon link below. And until next time, guys, I will see you.